I believe I may have figured out the issue as to why many of us are not able to properly sort photos and movies and files in Apple Photos. Now, a couple of months ago, David Cox from Tech Talk America released a video on how he sorts his photos, and it's a really good method, excellent method. And what he suggests is if you have any existing folders or albums inside Photos, to simply select them all and delete them. In turn, that should just keep everything in the library as it should be. You know, all your photos will be in the master photos library as such. You know, you see thousands here. I've got about, well, you can see I got over 20,000 photos. However, I believe there's a bug inside of Apple Photos, specifically when it comes to removing albums, deleting albums, okay? And I'm going to demonstrate this. And I have a feeling that a lot of you guys have probably done the mass delete and then expected all your photos to be okay, which they are. Physically, they're still in your master photos library. But when you start to do the smart album and you do the search field, because you notice I got David's system pretty much set up here. Haven't added really any folders or albums to it yet, but I'll get to that in a little bit. One thing at a time. This took me about 3 weeks to figure out, but I think I've solved the problem. Anyway, if you notice the smart album, I'm going to right click it here and I'm going to do edit smart album. And you notice I did exactly what David did. You name it by the year, match all of the following conditions. The date captured is in the range of the entire year from January to December. And also the other condition is that the album is not any, meaning that the photo cannot reside in any other album for it to be a part of this smart album, this 2019 smart album. So if a photo was shot in 2019, but you have it in some album outside of that realm, I mean, if you have it in some other album, even though it was shot in 2019, it won't show up in this smart album. So you figured, all right, well then, you know, just get rid of the album and it should put it all back into the 2019 smart album. Not the case. And I'm going to show this to you right now, okay? So on my screen here, I have a new batch of photos and movies that I just imported from my iPhone. And I put it in this folder here. So these movies have not been added to my Apple Photos library yet, okay? And these are all dated from 2020. So what I will do is I will do the creation of the folder and the smart album like David did for 2020. All right, so you go to albums and then you create new folder. And then you want to title this 2020. Well, I want to title it 2020 because that's where I'm going to be working. All right, and I'm going to move it up to here so I could see it. It's in 2020. And now in that folder, like David did, is he created a smart album in 2020 and he kept the year as well to keep things consistent. And it makes total sense to me. So now what I'm going to do in the smart album is I'm going to edit the smart album and I'm going to set the criteria. So the first thing, I want the date captured to be in the range of 2020. So that would be 1/1/2020 through 12/31/2020. And then what I want to do is I want to make sure that, as David did, album is not any. Now notice when I hit OK, this folder should, this smart album should fill up quickly, and making sure that I match all the criteria. Okay, boom. And now, okay, these are all my photos from 2020. And if you look up here in my info box, which I like to keep open, you'll see that was taken on New Year's Day. And the last photo from 2020 is this photo of the Omnisphere in Flushing Meadows Park, May 7th of 2020. Okay, so this smart album is working fine. Great, I'm pretty happy with that. I'm pretty excited. So this system works. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna select a random photo. Let me just select the Omnisphere photo because I like that one. And I'm going to create a new album, in a regular album inside 2020 because that's when I took the photo of the Omnisphere. And I'm going to create a new album and I'm going to call it Flushing Meadows Park. I believe there's no S. I believe it's Flushing Meadows Park. Okay, great. Now here's the issue. So say for example, I didn't want that album anymore. Like David said, you want to just get rid of them. So in my 2020 folder, I'm going to select that album and I'm going to right click it and I'm going to delete the album. Okay, so inside that album is that photo of the Omnisphere. I'm going to delete that album. Okay, this is what David this is what David suggested. I'm going to delete it. Okay, great. So when I go back to my master photos library, you see there's the Omnisphere and you know the date was May 7th of 2020. However, when you go to the 2020 smart folder, it's not there. Why is that? My theory, and I hope there's some software developers out there that can prove me wrong or right, or at least guide me in the right direction. So my theory is basically that when you delete an album and it has contents in it, you can delete the album and the photos are still in your primary library. Of course, they won't leave. You didn't delete the photo, you just deleted the album. However, when you just simply delete the album, it kind of leaves a mark on the photo or photos that were inside that album, basically indicating to your smart search that it still resides in an album. I know that sounds weird, and that's why I think this is like some sort of buggy issue with this app. So if you simply just delete the album with contents inside of it, you won't be deleting those contents, but you will not be able to do that smart search where you use the condition album is not any. It just won't work. It won't work. So simply put, you can't just delete the album. It's going to leave some marker on the photos that were inside that album to indicate to Apple Photos in their search that it still resides in an album, even though there's no album there to be had. Those photos are in your library. You didn't lose them, but you can't do this search. You see, there's the Omnisphere, but it's not in the smart album. So in order to avoid this from ever happening again, I'm going to show you what I do to prevent it. And then I'm going to tell you about, you can listen further on, and I'm going to tell you about what I had to do to get all my photos in smart albums. And I mean, I have, 20,000 plus photos. What I had to do to make it right with this search method. Let's go back to my 2020 folder. I'm going to create another album, and I'm going to call this Test. Great. All right, and now I got this album called Test, and there's all my 2020 photos, and I'm going to use the picture of the flower as my test. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically take the flower, drag it into the test album. I said folder before. That's another confusing thing. Albums and folders. So I'm going to take that photo, and now it's in an album called Test. And if you notice, it's not in my 2020 Smart album, but it is in Test, and it is indeed a photo from 2020. But let's say I don't want this album anymore. I'm going to throw it out, right? Yes, you will, but you must do this before you throw it out. And I'm going to take a couple of other photos so this way I can do like a multiple select. I'm just going to take this one and this one and this one of Glenn screaming, and I'm going to throw them all into this test album. Okay, Notice they were removed from the Smart album. Okay, that's great. That's what you want to do. That's the method working. And here are the 4 files in the test album, not the Smart album, just the one I created test. Now, if you want these photos to go back into your Smart album, or you want them to go into the Smart album when you have that search criteria, you have to physically remove them from the album before you delete the album. So here's what you do. Click on any of the files, and then you can either shift click to get them all, or you could select the ones you want, whatever. But here's the trick. Now, take any one of the photos and right click it, and you get this drop down menu. And what you want to do is remove the items from the album. Just do that. Boom. They're gone. However, when you go to the Smart album 2020, they're back. I didn't lose them. There's the screaming face, there's this one, and I don't know what the other one was, but they're all here. They're all here. I was looking at the photo of the flower, and there it is. So my test album is empty. All of my sort data is there. All my photos are in the Smart album. And now I will delete this album. I'll delete the album. Boom. Gone. And everything is hunky-dory. Everything is as it's supposed to be. Okay? So now we have to address as to why the Unisphere photo is in my master photos library, but not in the Smart album, even though it was obviously created in 2020. And the reason that it's not showing up in the Smart album is because of that bug that I believe that Apple Photos has, where if you throw an album out with contents already in it, it kind of leaves a mark on those photos. It's not anything that we could see or adjust, or maybe we can, but I don't know how. But it basically tells Apple Photos that it's still in an album, even though it obviously isn't, because the album doesn't exist. So how do you get the photo, this photo, into the Smart album? Well, it's not that difficult, and I will show you how to do it. So first off, you have to go to the photo that's in your master library, and you want to export it. Go File. You want to export it unmodified original. Oops. You want to export unmodified original for that photo. And I don't know what this means. I just leave it alone. I go Export. I'm going to save it to my desktop because it's nice and empty. I'm going to export that original. Okay, boom, there it is. Great. Now, once I've done that, you'll see it's got a JPEG lowercase extension on it, whereas the original had a capital JPG on it. That's neither here nor there. This is the original photo, and if you want to look at the information on it, you'll see that it was taken on May 7th of 2020 at 4:34, blah, blah, blah. So it's all good. All the timestamps there, all the camera information is there, everything is there. So now what I do is I take that photo that's in the master library right now and I delete it. Simply hit the delete key. It'll say, do you want to delete this photo? Yes. The reason I want to delete that photo is because it has some sort of marking on it telling Apple Photos, because it thinks it's still in an album. And it isn't, obviously, because there's no album. That album is gone. We deleted it. But we deleted it with that inside, and that was no good, at least according to my theory. So anyway, back to the Unisphere photo. I'm going to take that image, and I'm going to drag it back into Photos. Now, for some reason, it's going to ask you if you want to import the duplicate, but obviously, you see the other one isn't there. Just import it. You'll see what I mean. Okay, so there it is. There's a Unisphere. There's only one copy of it in your master library. There it is. And lo and behold, it's in the 2020 Smart album again. And that's because whatever marker that Apple Photos puts on the photo when you deleted it with the album, once you export it out, it kind of takes that marker out. So again, the moral of the story is remove the contents from all your albums and folders before you trash the folders. That's simply put, do not just trash the folders without removing the contents formally. And that means opening up the album, clicking all of the contents, then right-clicking one of those photos and doing a remove from album command. And that's it. And that's going to save you a heck of a lot of grief. Now imagine I basically took all of the folders and all of the albums I had on photos, and I did exactly what David told me to do. I selected them all, you know, whatever they were, and I just selected them and multiple select, and I deleted all of those albums. I just deleted them all. If I went here and I said, delete album, blah, 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 and I deleted all of the albums, which was great. You know, it was fine. It was a start. And then I could start making up this, you know, this system here. And I checked my photos were all in the master library. Everything was great. But then when I started to build up these smart albums, there were no contents in there. However, I know for a fact that I had, you know, there's over 1,000 photos in my 2016 smart album now. And I know for a fact that I had those photos in my master photo library. I mean, I can go to year and I can go to 2016 and I could see all the photos in 2016, blah, 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 blah. So I know they were there, but they weren't sorting. Like you guys are having the same issue. They're not sorting. So basically what I had to do, now this was the bad thing. I'm not a bad thing, but it was a long, arduous process. What I had to do was I basically had to go to my master photos library. I selected all photos, meaning Command A, selected them all, and then I had to export all of them to an external hard drive. I made a folder in an external hard drive, and you have to export it as unmodified original. You have to do it that way. Otherwise, it will redate everything, and you don't want that because then none of this is going to work. So then I did this, and then I went through the process of exporting all of my photos as originals, and then I exported it, and then I told it where to save it, and I saved it. And it took a few minutes for it to export all the files over to the new folder on the hard drive. Once I was done transferring all the photos and movies to the external hard drive, then I just quit photos. I found the photos library, which was on my system hard drive initially, but now I changed it. I found the photos library and I just simply trashed it. So this way, when I opened photos again, after I trashed that library, it was a clean slate. There was nothing, no contents, nothing. And then what I did was I slowly trickled in all of those photos and built a new library. And I created a new library on an external hard drive. So this way it's not sitting on my system hard drive and slowing things up on my system. You have to do it gradually, otherwise you'll crash photos because you'll get all sorts of weird errors. And, you know, because it just can't handle crunching all that data. Then once I started building the folders and the smart albums, everything was in the perfect spot. Everything worked out and I was able to sort. Now I haven't gotten into making the albums within the year folder yet because I just got this done a couple days ago, but I've got everything where I want it to be. Everything's working fine and I'm happy. So the moral of the story is before you trash your albums, you must remove the contents of each of those albums. Otherwise, you're going to have all sorts of issues like I did, and it's going to take you days to do this, and as opposed to just a couple of hours. It's a long time. So I hope this helps. I hope I didn't leave anything out. And if I did leave anything out, I'll probably be posting up at some point, but I will try to assemble this quickly and get it out there for you guys to see what's going on. So leave some remarks, you know, and anything that I may have forgotten or, you know, any questions you may have. If I'm able to address it, I'm not an expert on any of this stuff, believe me. I'm a musician. I'm not a computer expert or a photo expert. I'm just trying to organize myself a little bit here. If I can answer your questions, I will. And if I can't, I will say I can't. I'll just keep it simple. But thanks for watching, and I hope this helped. Stay safe. Bye-bye.